It looks straight, but it doesn't look straight to me. Maybe I can't see straight because I'm not straight. But Hi, hello. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Grace, and I have a new setup in which I'm using my laptop as a remote viewfinder because I found it kind of strange that I wasn't looking at the viewer, even though I was looking at the camera, because I use selfie mode, but I kept getting distracted by my own face. As one does, you know, when you on a Zoom call, you only look at yourself anyway. But I think I'm still gonna get distracted by my own face. God damn it. My lighting is terrible, and I'm using like my laptop, which it's not even charged, and it's like not even half charged. So like, and it might be raining, but babes, this is how you do a budget production. Spend no money, get that money. So yes, I haven't made a video in a long while. May and June were terrible for me. I graduated, I went to my graduation, I hung out with my friends, I miss them, I want to hang out with them more. They all live far away. June was just wild to me. I was just like, what do I do with my life now? I've graduated, what do I do now? Like, what do I do now? It was just I was just a big old buzzing mess up here, so I just couldn't find the time to do a video. I'm not a very good Asian. I was gonna do Asian readathon, but then I didn't, because I was busy and depressed. And then June happened, and it was like, oh yeah, it's Pride Month, and I'm like, I wasn't feeling very prideful, even though I'm trying to make up for it now. But I managed to, I have a little bit of time now, even though it's rapidly growing darker because there might be a thunderstorm, but you know what, we're gonna go for it. You know what, if I have to light a candle, then sit around the fire with me and let's talk about some books, because even though I was severely depressed for the last 2 months, I read some books because they're the only things that bring me joy now. So the first book that I read in the month of May was the last book for my alternate worlds class, and that is Binti by Nnendi Okorafor. This is a series of novellas, I believe, about this young woman named Binti who goes to a university, a very prestigious university of the galaxy, where all sorts of people from walks of life attend, and she is the first of her people to attend. However, on the way there, her ship is boarded by aliens who are enemies of the university. This was a really short read. As you can see, it's like a booklet, it's like a really short novella, but it was very interesting and I really liked it. I got kind of confused by some stuff at the end, and it's short. It didn't really, like, this sounds terrible, but it didn't really make a huge lasting impression on me because I was kind of confused by everything and it was so short. But I'm still gonna, you know, check it out because there are more in the series, and I believe there's like a collected edition. There's like an edition where all of the novellas in the series are collected. So like, if I ever get my hands on that, then I'm definitely gonna read it, because I just really do think that it's like, it feels like one chapter. It feels like I read a chapter sampler. It is really interesting. Like, I love this new sci-fi voice that I'm reading, but it's short. So I think if you ever find yourself with the collected edition where it has all of the novellas, then I think that might give you a better scope of the story and of the narrative than just this one novella. So that's Binti by Nnendi Okorafor. The next book that I read in the month of May was Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers. I mentioned this in my anticipated reads of 2021 list, and I was like, you know what? Like, up until this point, I didn't really read anything that was on my 2021 list, so I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna get this book out. It just came out. No, it didn't. It was May, and it was released in February. But I was like, you know what, I'm gonna read Honey Girl. So I read Honey Girl. Y'all, I wanted to DNF this. The writing style, it's like being back on Tumblr in the mid to 2010s. It was just so flowery and so purpley and just so very mouthful of forevers, but for like a whole book. Like So, okay, let me just get into the story. So, a young woman named Grace. just graduated from university. Well, Miss Grace has a PhD in astronomy, but she doesn't know what she wants to do with her life now that school is over. She tried to get a job with this company, but she is a person of color, she is queer, and she just is like, feels like an outsider in the astronomy field because it's, of course, predominantly white. So she's now kind of in this in-between space in her life, and then after a trip to Las Vegas, she finds out that she got drunkenly married to a young woman named Yuki. So after getting in contact with Yuki, exchanging some messages, she decides to go to New York to visit her, and they strike up a relationship, but Grace is still reeling from trying to find her place in the world, trying to live up to her father's very perfectionist expectations, all that, and dealing with like the anxiety of, you know, everyday life of being a queer woman of color. So that's just like the long and the short of it, of the story. There's like other subplots, there's like details and stuff that like I can't get into because I want to make this short before, oh my god, that's a cloud. That's a cloud. But I couldn't get into this because it just, the writing style, I am so tired of sage and sea salt. If I ever see those words again, my eyes will roll back so far in the back of my head that I will see my own brain. It's just so purpley, tumblery prose. They always call each other by their full names, and I'm like, literally, I barely hear my own name out of people's mouths. Who is Grace? Okay, so like some good things to say. Well, it is a story about a queer woman of color, and her wife is an Asian woman, and that's really cool, and there's a lot of queer characters in this, and it was really sweet, and like, you know, very much like, oh, like, if this were real, maybe I'd hang out with them and like, I don't know, have a wine night for a day or something. But I just, it was just way too much. It was just so rich. It was just so rich in this very particular type of tumblery poetry prose that I was like, okay, can we stop now and talk like real people? No, you're just gonna, okay, talk to me in prose, okay? I just couldn't get into the writing style. I couldn't get into the relationship either because it was just so, like Grace thinks that she knows Yuki. Even before she meets her in person, because she has these memories of this sea salt and sage girl from these blackout memories of getting drunk in Las Vegas, and I'm like, you do not know this person. You got drunk. You got blackout drunk, and you know that she smells like sage and sea salt. What you smell like does not determine how good of a person you are. Like, you can smell like fucking lavender and honey, and you could be like, I don't know, like killing the bees or something. So that's just weird. I mean, like, the narrative is predictable, but like, look, a lot of people love this book. Don't take my word for it. Just give it a shot, okay? Everything I say is with a grain of salt. I am just a little hermit in my little hermit hole. If you want to listen to the hermit, fine. But like, honey girl, I'm just rambling at this point. It was a book. I read it, and I gave it 3 stars. So the next book that I read was Moxie by Jennifer Matteo. This was a reread because the Netflix adaptation for this book came out in March. I cried while watching it because I wished I was back in school. Even though I hate high school, but I wish I was back in school. Anyway, this book. I enjoyed the movie more than the book because, first off, there were the presence of characters, girls of color in the movie were more prevalent. Maybe could have been better, but it was still a step up from this book. For example, Seth was Asian in the movie, Claudia was Asian in the movie, Lucy's character is also much more expanded in the movie. More or less, all of the plot points are the same in the book, all of the the characters did change from book to book. What I did like, I'm holding up the book, and this is just a review for the movie now. What I didn't like about the book, and what they actually improved upon in the movie, was the character of Seth. Because there's a certain point in the movie, and in the book, in the story, where in the book, Seth's character gets completely thrown on under the bus for like the sake of a third act conflict to like talk talk about like men and feminism. In the movie, that his character, of course there's still a third act conflict, but his character still has like his dignity, still has his own individual dignity. Because Seth's character is just a tool in the book, but in the movie, Seth's character was much more, I think, was better utilized in terms of what kind of character he is. So, I mean, do I even want to keep this book? It was fine. That's all I'm gonna say, really. But this book was fine. That's all I'm gonna say. It's a YA contemporary novel. Like, I'm not expecting much from it. It was just like a white girl doing feminism stuff. And I'm like, cool, feminism. We got it. We got it. The next book that I read in the month of, was it May or June? I think it was May, was Disarmed. Also, another book that I mentioned in my 2021 anticipated reads. This one was a disappointment. The book follows the Fence Boys going to Menton, France, where they go to a fencing club for like a week. Time is strange, because the timeline of the story in regards to the novels and the comics are all just so, I don't know. I think they're still in September. I don't know. They're still in fall, and it's been four comics and 2 novels, and they're somehow still in fall. And then they're like, let's go to France. And I'm like, isn't it still the beginning of the school year? They go to France for a fencing camp. Antics ensue, basically. I read this book, and then I finished this book. And then I sat in my chair and I thought, what did I just read? What did I just absorb into my brain with my eyes with these words? Nothing. I have absorbed nothing. What is the plot? What were the character development points? What were the big moments in which I was like, what? I cannot give you a cohesive narrative. I do not remember the events in which the events happened. I can give you a set of vaguely remembered snapshots in which stuff happened. I gave it a 3-star on Goodreads, even though I feel like it's 2.5 star, because, you know, I still love the boys. Like, even though the characters are just, the character progression was just so, they freaking plateaued. In striking distance, they were in a really good place. The characters of Aiden and Harvard were in a really interesting place in which their character developments could develop. And then all of that stuff that was like, they didn't check off the gun, okay? They just fucking like, okay, look, we're getting character development. And then this book happens, and then it's like, because like all of the catalysts that were presented in the last book did not pan out. And I'm like, where is the almost stepmom? She was the perfect catalyst. And then there are like these other characters, and I'm like, who are these people? And then they're like, oh, you like Harvard, you like Aiden, right? And then Harvard's like, oh, I guess I do. And then I'm like, who the fuck is this? There was just a lot of stuff that was not utilized. They had all of the tools. They had all of the tools in the last book. They had all of the tools. They just needed to use them. But they didn't use them. And now I am angry. Eugene, he is being pushed farther and farther into the sidelines. And I'm like, why? Why would you do this to my precious Filipino bean? The author evidently is playing favorites. This takes place in Europe. Now, I am not a European, but I am gay. But from my European friends, racism and homophobia in Europe is fucking wild. I mean, it's also wild in America, but still. I wrote in my review of Striking Distance that I didn't want race to be mentioned because I wanted to, like, pretend that this was in a slightly more idealized world than this one, in which racism didn't exist. But they mentioned race very, very briefly in the last book. And then when I was reading this book, Aiden and Harvard will get into these fights. Words, English, I am stringing together in a sentence. They would get into these fights, and I would just feel it in the periphery that Harvard This guy, he would mention race. Because the thing is that in this book, Aiden gets into so much shit. He causes so much shit. Harvard could not get away with that. Because he's white. Because he has a rich dad who's pulling the strings behind all of his actions to make sure nothing stains his record. Harvard cannot do that. Not in America, not in Europe. So, like, when they would get into these fights, like, I could just feel it if they would just say it, like, bring it out. Because they needed it. Because Aiden was doing all this shit. And Harvard, like, had to be the good kid. Because, you know, you have to work twice as hard to get half of what they get. And that's obviously, like, Harvard's whole, like, character, like, backstory. Neither of the authors are American. And neither of the authors are black. So it's just this eternal question. Is it better to try and fail, or is it better to try and not at all? And I don't know. I don't know. I still like Seiji and Nicholas. They were my favorite parts. They were my favorite parts of this book. They were my favorite parts of this last book. They could have been written a little better because I found them to be really stupid. Just honestly, like, this book was, unfortunately, I have to say it was a disappointment to me. I still love the boys, but damn, their characterization was just, where did it go? I don't know where it went. It was in the comics in an interesting place. It was in the last novel, even in an interesting place. In this, I don't know where it went. I don't know where it went. I'm not just disappointed. I'm a little sad. C.S. Pacat, if you're watching this, please give us Volume 5 information. Please give us Volume 5. Unfortunately, I had some technical difficulties, so now it's the next day, and now I'm catching up on filming. I'm sorry if you can hear construction, but moving on. So the next book that I read in the month of May was the final revival of Opal and Nev by Donnie Walton. This was a historical fiction book chronicling the lives of rock stars Opal Jewel and Nev Charles from, like, the rock eras of, like, the 60s, 70s, and 80s. This was such a beautiful, immersive story. It's set in an interview format, so you get to hear all of the different types of voices, of character voices, of perspectives, of opinions, because you get to see so many different types of people commenting on these same events, but you have all these different perspectives and then new things are revealed. I remember the writing was just so compelling in the beginning. I was like, is this based off a real story? I looked it up, and then the first Google search was like, from NPR, was like, hey, you probably thought this was a real story. Well, it's not, but it's just that good. And I'm like, you're right, NPR, it is just that good. It's just a really beautiful book. It talks about, like, the racism that happened during those times, the misogyny that happened during those times, and the way it impacted so many people, including the narrator, who was a journalist making a book of Opal and Nev, and she has a personal connection to their story because her father was involved in Opal's life in certain ways. I'm not going to spoil it, but seriously, if you find yourself with this book, I highly recommend you read it. It's just so good, and I definitely highly recommend it. So the next book, or shall I say books, that I read starting the month of June was the Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo. Need I say more? I picked these up again after I watched the Shadow and Bone show on Netflix. I was like, damn, I really liked the show. I think it was a really interesting adaptation. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm a fan of the way all the plot was changed. Well, I didn't really like the Shadow and Bone books that much, and I feel like, if they had just done a one-to-one adaptation of Shadow and Bone, it would probably be kind of boring. So they put the crows in there to make it more compelling to get people to watch it. Because I do feel like more people are fans of Six of Crows. But alas, anyway, so what can I say more about these books? I read them, I've been meaning to reread them for a while because I was like, I have King of Scars, but it's been a long time since I've read any of the other books, so I feel like I should catch up on it. So, also, the TV show did not have my boy Wylan in it. I'm so mad. I'm like, where's Wylan? And my friends who are watching with me are like, Wylan's not here right now. I was like, ah. Season 2 got announced. I hope... They better have Wylan in it. He's my son. You know, recently, like, a criticism that's been going around is brought up again that, like, some people who don't like the books say that the characters who are all teenagers, like, don't act like teenagers, they act like too mature. And I'm like, that's the reason why I like the characters so much, because they are really mature teenagers. I'm putting mature in air quotes because the thing is, they're not really like just mature. They've gone through like traumatizing stuff, and we all know trauma makes the brain age faster. Because the thing is that usually with contemporaries, but also in general with a lot of teen characters, I find them to be too childish, and I just can't get into them. Probably because with me, I was so depressed as a teenager that I just like aged 10 years. I find that the most relatable. Anyway, The Darkling is sexy. You can't change my mind. I really like the Six of Crows trilogy. I hope they get to adapt this story into the TV show, because they don't touch upon the events of this book. They really do super well with the characters in the TV show. The plot, of course, is greatly changed, but I do highly recommend reading Six of Crows. I highly recommend watching the TV show. Also, I love Jessie Maylie. The next book that I read in the month of June, making all things creepy and gay, it was The Monster of Elendhaven by Jennifer Giesbrecht. The Monster of Elendhaven follows a young man named Johann, and he runs into another young dandy named Florian, and Johann is like, hey, I'm a monster, I've caused so much shit, and also I can't die. And Florian's like, oh, well, I'm the last son of a disgraced noble family, and I'm ready to do some revenge. Do you want to help me? And Johann's like, I would do anything for you. And it's a novella, so it's quite short, but it follows their quest, I guess you can say, for a certain type of revenge, and also their weird, strange, messy relationship. I just really loved the atmospheric writing, I think is what really draws me in, because it takes place in this crumbling, decrepit city that's slowly losing itself to like these black waves that are creeping up on the seawalls. And it's just full of dark history. But like I said, it's quite short, so I feel like I couldn't really latch onto the characters as much as I wanted to. I guess maybe just novellas aren't for me. And I guess because their relationship is so unlabelable, if that's a word. That's a word now. I feel like that might draw some people away from it. But it was so short. I finished it in like, well, I didn't finish it in a day, but if I just sat myself down, I would have. Ambiguous stuff is a hit or a miss for me because I have staircase brain. Because like, it takes me a minute to get to things, and even then, it's like, will I get it? I don't know. Is my brain a staircase or a colander staircase? Who knows? But I did enjoy this book for the experience that it gave me. Even though I might not have understood the plot super well, I still really liked it. So if you find yourself with it, then give it a go. The next book that I read was Kink Stories, a short story anthology of kinky erotica stories by R.O. Kwon and Garth Greenwell. It was fine. Nothing really stood out to me, even though it was a book of kinky erotic stories. I just read them and I was like, cool. You did some BDSM. You examined what BDSM means to you and what it does for you. Cool. Okay. It was fine. It was fine. I can't really think of a story that stood out to me in any particular way, that really, I guess, excited me in a particular way. You would think because it was an erotic short story collection that, I don't know, you feel kind of excited, but I was just like, okay, they're doing this. Perhaps the purpose of the stories was less to excite the reader and more to examine, like, kink in people's lives. And I'm like, cool, that's not what I picked up the book for, but okay. I've read fan fiction that excited me more, which is quite the harsh criticism, but it's true. Kink was fine. I really can't say anything more about it. Go read fanfiction. No. The next book that I read was a really cute, really wholesome graphic novel, and that is Mooncakes by Suzanne Walker and Wendy Xu. This follows a young woman named Nova who runs a witch shop with her grandmothers, and she runs into her childhood friend Tam, who is a werewolf. And all of these cute little antics ensue, and together they have to solve the problem of a demon roaming around in their forest, who set the demon loose, who is trying to capture Tam. This was, it was a really cute, sweet, short graphic novel. Cute is basically the highlighted word here, because I think that the plot is very simple, because the thing is that I think it's meant for like children's or middle grade, but this has been on my list. I thought it was really cute, and I really liked all the different diversity we get. Nova uses hearing aids, Tam uses they them pronouns, there are lesbian grandmas, there is a really cool best friend. So if you find yourself with this novel, graphic novel, then give it a go. It's really sweet, really cute, really short, really wholesome. And that's what I need right now. And so now we've come to the last book that I've read for the month of June, but not quite the last thing that I read in the month of June, and that is Shadows Return, the 4th book in the Nightrunner series by Lynn Fwelling. So if you don't know the Nightrunner series, quick overview: it's a fantasy series following two spies and thieves named Saragil and Alec. They are bisexual fairymen who love each other very much. And the 4th book has them kidnapped and enslaved and tortured. And I started this in January. I got up to, you know, the kidnapping and enslaving and torturing part. That was the first half. And I was like, damn, I am not in the right headspace right now. It's like winter. I'm depressed. I'm gonna put this down. And I did not pick it up until 6 months later in June, where now it's not winter, but I'm still depressed. But it was Pride Month, and I was like, you know, I miss my bisexual fairymen. I want to see how they are. I want to see if they're okay. Luckily, they are okay. But, you know, content warning for all like kidnapping and torturing and enslaving, it's intense. But we get to see a new character. His name is Sabran. I'm not gonna give him any spoilers, but I love Sabran so much, and I would die for him, and that is a rock fact. Seriously though, I do recommend reading the Nightrunner series. I feel like not a lot of people talk about it, and it featured like queer characters in the 90s. I'm almost already done with book 5 because there is less triggering content, I guess you can say, less in the 5th book. I'm almost done with it, so hopefully this will be the year that I finally finish the Nightrunner series, because I've been kind of going on and off of it for years. But seriously though, look at the Nightrunner series. If that's your jam, then totally, I highly recommend going for it. Oh, think again. You think that I didn't read any manga this 2 months? 2 months I didn't read any manga? You think again, man. Think again, because I made a friend, and that friend is lending me his volumes of Berserk. So yes, I made a new friend at work. A friend at work gave me his volumes of Berserk manga, and I'm like, finally, this will be a really... Now I finally have the opportunity to read Berserk, because, you know, like the thing with the manga, with the anime adaptations, is all just really strange and messy. But I know a lot about Berserk, being the anime nerd that I am. Finally, I'm reading it, and I highly enjoy it. For those of you who don't know and are living under a rock, Berserk follows this young man named Guts. He's called the Black Swordsman, and he is dealing with a lot of shit. But he's like, I'm gonna swing my big sword around because I want to live, and I want to live my life and not let the darkness take me. Right now I'm in the Golden Age arc, and this is a look into his earlier years when he is with the Band of a Hawk, led by another young man named Griffith. And Griffith is a kitten who thinks of nothing but murder all day, but he has done absolutely nothing wrong in his life, and I love him so much. The art is just so beautiful, and it's just so highly detailed, and I just can't believe, every time I go to another panel, I'm like, I can't believe you drew this. This is so much. Because this is a fantasy battle manga, there's so many battle scenes, of course. And so there would be like cavalries of horses crashing against each other, and you can see every single horse, and you can see every single piece of armor, and every single like splash of blood, and every single sword swing, and every single spear that runs through a guy's head. And I'm like, damn, you really drew every single horse, every single piece of armor. You drew everything. Like, it's such a deep depth of focus, because the thing is, you know, like, I feel like with most comics and manga, like, when it comes to big scenes, they would, of course, like, focus on the things that are front and center. But the depth of focus is so deep that, like, he draws everything, and I'm like, oh my god, you're drawing everything! And it's just so detailed and just so dynamic, and, like, so... And, like, the use of blacks and inks and details. Kentaro Miura died way too young. He was 54. I can't even. You know, honestly, what better time to read Berserk than now? Honestly, it's just so beautiful. And I think it really is fitting for, I think, the things that, like, we're all dealing through, especially in terms of mental health and this situation, the global panoramic that we're still in. Because there is still a light at the end of the tunnel. And if you have to swing a big sword around to find it, then you will. Also, Casca is my queen. Casca is my queen, and I love her so much. And I'm scared. I'm so scared. But I shall keep you all updated with my Berserk progress, because the thing is, I'm reading it very slowly because my friend is lending me his books, and I don't see my friend every day. But those were all the books that I read for the months of May and June. Hopefully I can kick myself in the butt to make more videos, just to get the ball rolling, because now I'm an official college graduate. What else am I gonna do with my life but make videos and talk about books? I already finished my first book for the month of July. It's a doozy. Ew. Just thinking about it makes my soul sucked out of my body. But just wait for that. Anyway, drink water, stay hydrated, like, subscribe. Leave a comment in the comments down below where the comments are if you read any of these books and have any thoughts about them, any of the books that you read in the months of May and June. I am gonna go eat a bagel. Kiss your fandom friends goodnight. I'll see you in the next video.